The whole issue was when the people in Kahnawake occupied the pines was to stop a golf course from being built in the pines and around their gravesite in a patch of land that is still under dispute, and still under dispute today. And that was the issue at that time. Still is the issue. And it was never the issue. It wasn't cigarettes. It wasn't casinos or gaming or anything else. It was to protect the land, And the taking of the bridge here was just to draw attention to what happened in Kahnawake, because they're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no major highways, or the police could do what they please out there and cordon off the area, and nobody will know. We had to take the bridge to draw attention to that, and it was effective. And we held the bridge, and they held the pines, and the golf course was never built. After all that 78-day. Confrontation, and that's a victory, and in itself, But and people, it was about the land, The issue wasn't warriors, it wasn't guns, it wasn't anything else, It was the land, and we have to remember that.
There was something brewing. I expected something to happen, because we saw what happened in Akwesasne just a couple of months before the Kahnawake situation, and there seemed to be a lot of things brewing. But I guess the suddenness of it and the unexpectedness of it is really, the intensity is something that really surprised me, and I think it caught a lot of us off guard. It really did. And I guess if you speak to people on the other side, they did not expect the kind of reaction that they got from our people in terms of defending our territory, defending our people, defending our future.
I remember exactly where I was when it happened. I was working for a local tree company here in Verdun, and the gentleman who owned the home came out and said, "Guys, you're from Kahnawake, you better come and take a look at this." And he invited us into his home, and saw what was happening on TV. Again, not fully understanding exactly how large it would be or how large it would become, but we were trapped outside. I had to spend the entire day trying to get across and hitting resistance from mobs to municipal police to SQ, eventually traveling all the way around to Chateauguay, and then a local coming to get us by boat and bringing us back into town. So it was trying time, and I mean, over the 78 days, everything from fighting with local government people as well as external, even though I wasn't involved in politics, it became who you were living in and around Kahnawake. So it was an amazing summer. Hopefully we never have to do anything like that again.
20 years ago this week, what were you doing?
Well, I was working this week. I was working in Quebec, and then I had an office there and a store, and I got a call from the Nation office, I guess about the 17th of July, that they needed someone to speak to the people in Saint Isidore so that they could bring food in across the border into Kahnawake, because it was becoming a lack of food. So what I did is, before coming into Kahnawake, I called the Nation office and I said, "Send somebody here now, we're ready." I made arrangements that we're going to bring food in. And what happened is, before that, I had a lot of experience meeting a lot of people in government, and I had the opportunity to meet royalty during Expo 67, the Queen, presidents, emperors, and I spoke to them mostly about our situation as Indian people and the problems that we faced, and hoping that they would help to resolve it. And then in July 17th, I ended up in a cow barn with a telephone and all the flies flying around me, trying to protect the rights of our people by bringing food in. It was quite ironic that this should happen. I stayed there for a couple of days trying to bring this food through, which we succeeded. Of course, we had to hide from the RCMP officers and the army, which was patrolling the area. The farmer was nervous as hell, with his wife and family. But anyway, we managed to get that thing done. So that was a unique experience.
First, I was supposed to deal with the media. That's what I was asked to do, and I did deal with the media a lot through the whole summer, no matter where I was. And because I was a coordinator of the Nation office previous to that, and so I dealt with the media quite a bit before. But I was sent as a negotiator on July 12th to Kahnawake, and I was there for about 4 or 5 days. I came back once or twice during that time. But I was a negotiator with along with the people from Kahnawake, with John Siacha on the other side of the table, and trying to resolve the issue, peacefully. We wanted to. Everybody wanted it resolved. We wanted, the goals were to make sure the pines weren't going to be cut down. The graveyard was going to be protected, and with the whole land issue to be dealt with, and also, but the sticking point seemed to be amnesty. The word that was used at times was amnesty for the people in the pines. We didn't want anybody charged for standing up to defend the land, and that seemed to be the sticking point. And it was a sticking point for for the rest of the summer in those negotiations.
It was a situation where one of the big issues was to try and prevent loss of life. Was very important to me, as well as trying to be able to be a part of what was going on, because if one recalls in the beginning, the band council here in Kahnawake and the band council, if you will, in Kanesatake, were sort of shunted on the side, and a group of people decided that they were going to be the ones to be negotiators, and do whatever needs to be done. And my concern was that as a result of that, the authorities out there would say, well, these are not legitimate people to deal with. In other words, those that were sitting at the table, or those who were manning the barricades, or those who were contending that they were the true negotiators, the one and only. And this created a stir, and that was one of the things. I had discussions with the Premier, with the Prime Minister. They're the ones that called, demanding that the barricades come down. This was in less than 24 hours. So you had a situation, or demanding of me that I should do something, to be involved. And that wasn't my motivation. My motivation was we had community members who wanted to see their elected officials involved.
We were open 24 hours. We never closed after that. And we were open more or less like as an information center here. And we had people calling us, scared people, elderly people. So we had to be here. We had to be working. Like, I was in here like 12, 14 hours, 16 hours a day. And I didn't have a car. I was riding a bike. My car was stuck in Chattagee. So the bottom line is trying to help the elders, trying to assist people with information. And there was all kinds of, the press kept calling and finding out this, finding out that. And luckily, as a result of that, today we have a communication department that deals with all of that. Back then we didn't. And it was very difficult because sometimes we weren't sure if we were going to give the accurate information, or perhaps maybe we gave too much information, so that was a little bit scary too. And then it was also trying to maintain the calm within our community, because we had in our internal community, we had people that were not happy with it, but you have to put yourself in their position as well. And there was people that were afraid. There was a lot of people that were pregnant that summer, and the fear, like, where were they going to have their babies? Like, heaven help them if they had to go into labor. Where would they go? The people who were injured, and a lot of sickness, as we see, like, that doesn't change. Those issues don't change. They don't go on hold because we have a blockade. Nothing stops. And there was all these issues happening, and the people died. How are we going to bury them? There was no hearse. There was no flowers. There was no gas. People couldn't drive their cars. And then when there was gas, it was rationed, very, very little and limited. So a typical day was you had to be on your toes, and you had to know exactly what was going on. And our staff here was wonderful at the time in 1990, and it actually wasn't that long. It was the end of July that week and into the week of August, and it was that we had no power, and a lot of people around this area could use their air conditioner, so on and so forth. So they were coming in here and spending part of their day here, which was nice, because when do we get the chance to actually sit with people unless we go and personally visit with them? So that was part of the nice things.
As time went on, the other side, whether be it the army, the police, or the federal provincial authorities, did whatever they could to destabilize and to criminalize and to, as much as possible, to delegitimize the people who were sitting at the table. And that's when the turning point was, when the community of Kahnawake said we would defend what had been established, but there needed to be a working relationship between traditional and non-traditional. Because if you go back at that point, just prior to the the crisis. We had an internal crisis ourselves. We were going through turmoil in terms of who represented the community politically, and all, and a lot of that stuff was happening, and then this came along. This was a unifying factor, as far as I was concerned, and it was something that brought us together, and created a need to work with each other, because we had the we had the resources to be able to provide for services in the community, and it didn't matter what you believed in. We helped anybody and everybody. So it was understood that there was going to be representation from myself, and we would use all our resources that we had in order to support the cause.
I was sent to the United Nations after the negotiations broke down, and because I had the most experience, UN experience at that time, and of course the United Nations didn't. We had to know. We had to inform the United Nations of what was going on, because Canada has this altar boy image out there in the world, and we had to let the world know that things are not that great in Canada, and so it was important for us to take this whole issue internationally. And the United Nations just happened to be hosting a meeting called the Working Group on Indigenous Populations, so which I've been attending for the 3 previous years. So going to that meeting, we were able to let the people know what was happening with the Mohawks in Canada, and Canada was definitely on the defensive all that time. It was fortunate that the year before, in 1989, the chairman of the working group, Erica Irene Diaz, who was a human rights expert from Greece, came to our longhouse here, and met our people, and was very, very impressed with us. So when the issue, when I went to Geneva that summer, she was all ready to listen to us, because she was quite upset with Canada having the army and the police surround this community, and so she was one of our greatest allies in there. And I remember her in the hallway pointing her finger at the Canadian delegation, saying, "What are you doing to my Mohawks?" So she was really a wonderful woman, and the rest of the working group too was very, very supportive and helping us in any way they can.
I remember the day that my family, we decided we were going to leave. We were really concerned about what was going to happen with, I guess there was a threat of the army coming in. So a whole bunch of people made a convoy all together. We were all going to leave the community together. And as we got to the end of the bridge, there was construction going on, but there was also, because it was barricaded off, a whole bunch of people were there waiting for us. They knew that we were evacuating. They were standing there with signs and hateful messages. They all began to throw all the rocks and debris and golf balls and smash the vehicles with whatever they could. And I just remember I was in the back seat, and the glass shattered. I had glass all over me. It was in my hair. And my grandmother was sitting next to me. And, being 10 years old, I was more concerned about my grandmother and how she was, and fear for her. And I don't know, it wasn't a pleasant experience, to say the least, and it's something I'll never forget.
The situation on the island could have at any time exploded into, loss of life, death, injury, and on one hand, it was a very difficult circumstance, but it was also a proud moment for me, because the military decided that they were going to, along with the assistance of the SQ, use the island as a means of getting into the community. And everybody stood their ground there. It was almost instinctive for me to be able to say, well, we have to prevent any kind of real confrontation. And again, the loss of life is always uppermost in my thoughts at that time. So it was almost instinctive to try and be the buffer. And I had asked other people to help, so it wasn't just me. There was, and it wasn't necessarily anybody in authority. It was a number of different people that were there, and I said, come on guys, let's get in here, let's sort of break this up. Along with the peacekeepers, some of the peacekeepers who were very effective in creating a buffer and calming both the military as well as our own people, so that there wasn't going to be a major disaster. And eventually, our people's will to prevent the military from continuing to be on the island or marching into the community and taking over was, we were successful in preventing that. And it was a heck of a scene, almost surreal, in the evening when the fire was built and the people started dancing. Our men started doing their warrior dance, and the helicopters were leaving, taking the men out, the military out. It was something that was unbelievable. You would never see that again ever in your life, not even in a movie.
What happened in 1990 was just probably magnificent in the sense that this community held itself together against tremendous forces on the outside. We had, you had a hostile police force. You had an army. You had people rioting on our borders. You had a hostile media. And yet this community held together very well, and we were able to feed each other. We were able to support each other. And it came through some very, very tough times. And not everybody was on the same page all the time. There were some difference of opinion, and some people were not happy with the situation. But all in all, we came through. This community came through very, very well, and toughened. I think it toughened this community, and I think we're still today, 20 years later. I think that toughness still is evident.
To pinpoint any story to talk about, I guess all the stories have been told. The biggest one I have a hard problem with is when the stoning, when the people cross the bridge. I don't think that should have been called for. And because we lost two of our elders because of the people outside of their actions, throwing stones and wrecking cars. I think that was I think that was about the biggest thing that's ever happened. And then when the other thing, I guess, is when the SQ went into Kahnawake with their guns blazing. I think that was the most dangerous time. I think that a lot of people could have got killed at that time. And it's hard to pinpoint. And it's, I don't know, we use this a powwow as a way of never to forget what happened 20 years ago. And always for you young people to remember, never to forget. Hopefully this never happens again.
Everybody uniting in Kahnawake. All the men were gathering on the bridge, working from the bingo hall, from the nation office, just gathering of all men of all ages, from 15 to 20 to 30 to 50. And men that were in war sharing their experiences, what they went through and how they lived through war.
I used to be at the cookhouse to help them cook for all the men that were on the barricades, but it just happened on that one day that I had gone home, and I was doing laundry at home, and I happened to look out the window, and I could hear this rumbling coming down the road, because we had like a gravel road. And so you could hear the rumble, and I was wondering, what is this loud noise that's outside, And I had like a little hedge in the front of my, the road, so that the army tank, it stopped right in front of our house. Like, what is this guy doing? He's looking in the window of the house, like, all I'm doing is laundry. I got so mad that I turned around and I stared at him, and I felt like as if I was a peeping Tom looking at him. His eyes got really big because he realized that I was watching him. I was so stunned for that few seconds. I didn't even think. All I did was I grabbed the clothespins out of my, and I started chasing him, and I was throwing clothespins at the army tank. And it's like, I told people later on, it's like, are you crazy? Because if you did that, no, there was no witnesses. All you had to do was turn around, come back, and run me over. Nobody would have ever known what happened. But it's like, it was so automatic. Like, I did that, and it was like, afterwards, it was like such a joke. I mean, in the middle of everything that was always constantly escalating, and everybody was so scared, at the same time, we were always laughing about little things that happened at the same time. So that's what I remember the most.
After the barricades came down, a lot of things needed to continue to happen. You know, there was no time to take a break. And I have to say that there was a lot of people who did take a break and disappeared. And we didn't see them for a long time. Some of them never came back again, never got involved. That was their, you know, their moment in the sun, or their last hurrah, if you want to call it that. But for many of us in responsibilities and duties, and I was one of those people, had no time to take a break. We just had to keep on going and going and going. It was almost like you had to start rebuilding relations almost immediately. Even though there was still a lot of turmoil with the outside, you know, all kinds of issues that were coming up, and we were looking at perhaps being punished almost like by various levels of government, as well as outside law enforcement agencies and groups and organizations. So for me, it was something that I want people to know, that from that time onward until right up to my retirement in 2004, it was rebuilding. Rebuilding as much as possible, and getting people to understand that you had to do that. You had to go back to the table. And you had to be able to prevent such incidences from arising again. Because as you'll know, you know, for a long time we still had the guard houses, if you want to call them that. We still had, you know, these sort of barricades and our own people watching, which was good in a sense, but on the other hand, you know, there was still that instability within the community. The stabilization needed to take place. We needed to have the reestablishment of our peacekeepers as being the #1 law enforcement agency in Kahnawake, and it took a long time. It did take a long time. We needed to get the military out of Kahnawake. We needed to get the police, all the policing agencies that were here, and our economy had to start building again. You know, our businesses had to reopen again. So it was a very trying, difficult period. 78 days was one thing, you know, and it was difficult. But once those barricades came down, it was even more difficult after that, in terms of keeping the people in the unity together, as well as trying to find ways of keeping the outside at the table and not imposing so severe restrictions on us, both financially as well as physically, that it would make life almost impossible. So it was a difficult balancing act that had to take place.
It was a watershed at the UN, because it showed that even a country like Canada has problems with Indigenous people. People always felt that the problems were in South America or someplace like that. But what happened in 1990 showed that even in the most developed and the richest countries in the world, there are serious problems with the Indigenous peoples, and that you know, and Canada was no exception, and that people were absolutely shocked, very surprised about Canada's behavior, and they were really put Canada on the hot seat for what was happening, and Canada had to react to that. Canada itself changed its attitude. At first, it was very defensive for sure at the end, but they hired PR companies. They sent special representatives to the UN who were supposed to be experts on a Native situation in Canada, and it changed their behavior to quite an extent. And also, Canada had to prove, after 1990, had to prove that they have good relations with Native people. So that's how Nunavut was created. It was Nunavut. They speeded up the process to create Nunavut because of what happened in 1990. They had to show to the world that they can negotiate positive things with Indigenous peoples here.
Well, I'll start at municipal level. I think we obviously got their attention, given that even though they weren't the target of the blockade of the bridge, so to speak, that our neighboring communities understand and realize the importance of our relationship and building towards that. I think it's continued in the past 20 years and probably strengthened and gotten better. Politically, commercially, maybe not so much, but we're trying to bridge that gap as well. Provincially, I think obviously they know that we hold the key, location, not only for economic development, but politically speaking, they stand up and listen when we do something of importance. They always look at this date, again, in their history and ours, as something that needs to be worked on and worked through in the future. Federally, I think it's fallen off. Back then, I think through the early 90s up until probably around 96, 97, we had their attention. It kind of fell off after CKR fell away. That was Canada-Kahnawake relations process, which was trying to bring a form of self-government here into the community, and wasn't accepted by council nor the community. So we don't have their attention as much, so to speak, but it's time again. I think that we need to do something and say something in retrospect in terms of them coming back to the table. We're trying that through membership, being one of the focuses of council at this point, and some of the other governance issues that are facing us. So I think it was extremely important that it happened. Didn't fully understand it at the time, being a young man and not on council, as you said, but understanding ramifications now, I think it was amazing in terms of what happened, solidarity for other sister community in Kanesatake across the country, and I think it put Kahnawake on the map once again in terms of political prowess, and 20 years later we're still following through on that.
Well, I believe that there has been a major impact. One of the impacts is that we've become more open to council. We've become more transparent. I don't think we can get any more transparent unless we all come to work naked, because the bottom line is we have communication department that we basically give out all the information, and the council has been, since I'm here and after the events of 1990, there has always been an effort from our table to work with the opposite, not the opposite, I hate to say that word, but with the traditional people, and to make sure that we have a good working relationship, that no matter what happens down the road, we're together as Unguhua, as Mohawk people, to help one another. And whether it's in good times or bad times, I think that the door has been opened. And I don't believe for a moment that we will ever allow this to happen again. Not to say that we would prevent anyone from standing up for what they believe in. That's not the point. But the point is we will never be put into a corner by the outside people, never again.
Do you think it was a time that kind of helped to bring the community together, no matter what side of the fence you're on politically?
I think eventually, but it also cut deep in terms of some of the, I guess you'd call it sides that were chosen back then, whether it was through Longhouse support, whether it was through MCK support, whether it was non-support of the blockade at all. And I think people in this community still feel that way today. You know, why did it happen? Who gave the okay to do those types of things? It caused a great divide even internally. But again, I think it long-term showed solidarity, and it showed the support that we can and give to each other as well as other communities. But those problems, I think, still exist internally in terms of how it gets done, who's in charge, and what voice does the community have.
It came to my attention that a lot of people here were scared, at least the older people that had come to our office and were really, some of them crying, you know, and some of them really expressing their emotions about the fear that was in them. And I don't think that was seen by everybody. That, you know, and they wouldn't show it openly, but when they came into our office, they showed that fear, you know, the older people. So, and that's another example that when we do something, you know, we better make sure that our older people and the people in the community know what is going on. On the other hand, I think the whole affair of 90 did help us a lot. For that matter, it shows more that it helped a lot of the other Indian people across the country, because they used that situation to argue a lot of things that they're gaining in now. Even the courts used the example of 90 and granted some of the rights to the Indian people through what happened here. But what I was pleased about is that our people stood up and said, no more are you going to push us around, we're going to defend our rights no matter what. You know, this is the good thing that happened as far as I'm concerned.
We have to be proud of our accomplishment. We have to be proud that we stopped that golf course, and that land is still, Kanesatake was at least given the opportunity to survive and to come along and move forward and maybe reach a larger land agreement in the future. You know, we were hoping it would have it by now, but the Canadian government is typical. It's typical of the Canadian government not to respond to what they look at the crisis at the moment, but never look at the bigger picture and trying to solve the larger issues, because those larger issues are still there. And can there be another crisis in Kanesatake tomorrow? Yes, there can be, because that land issue is still not resolved, and the Pines is still there. The Pines is still under pressure for development. and it can happen again. And I hope that we don't have to block the bridge again. Nobody wants to do that, and I don't think that the government wants that to happen either. And they should be negotiating, but right now, not very much has happened. So yeah, I think it was quite an accomplishment what happened in 1990.
Every year it's a reminder of, what happened, but I try to keep, positive thoughts about it, and, the powwow is a good thing for us to, kind of let it go and just think about the future. And, it was something that happened, but, like I said, we gotta move forward, and all of the hostile feelings that I had once upon a time as a result of that have since ceased, and, just remember it as the crisis.
Well, I think that it's important to remember 1990 so that we don't repeat the mistakes that have been made, and that we remember the positive things that happened, and we have to remember to remain strong, and let the outside know that we are strong, both politically and mentally and physically strong, and because that will guarantee our continued existence, and also keep outside forces at bay.